What comes to mind for you when I say leprechaun? Like, if I were to ask you to describe a leprechaun,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Well, there's that like super popular depiction where they're like, yeah, I'm the little guy in the green outfit with the red hair and beard. No?
Okay.
Yeah. And there's
I couldn't help it. You got me on like the little yoo-hoo-hoo. I like was
Yeah.
really trying to keep it together for that.
I
So
know.
sorry.
no, that was
Okay. Yeah,
pot
sure.
of gold, rainbows.
Yeah.
The
Well,
stereotypical stuff.
what's the stereotypical?
Yeah.
So I want you to think about a leprechaun. What you think a leprechaun looks like in your mind's eye. Visualize it. Now take that and keep part of it, but toss most of it away.
Okay. Done. After doing this a bunch of times, it's a lot easier to like sort of just like unpack your expectations and just like kind of just chuck them.
Yeah, I feel
You know?
like everyone has preconceived notions of what things look like based on what is portrayed in the media or whatever movies they've seen, especially if they are really into a particular fandom and that fandom has things looking a certain way.
Like perhaps the Leprechaun movies starring Warwick Davis.
I was going to mention that at some point in time, but yes, exactly. So, as you guessed it, I'm talking about leprechauns today. And before I get into more of what I found out, the origins of leprechauns, like the stories behind where they come from and what they look like, I'm just going to review, like we've already talked about, what we think they look like nowadays because of movies, television, and merchandise for that certain Irish holiday. Usually always dressed in green, you have green everything, but sometimes apparently he has a little apron on. He can be seen smoking a pipe on occasion.
Yep.
He is also illustrated on occasion sitting on a toadstool.
Okay. Yeah.
As we've mentioned, he's associated with rainbows and pots of gold, or Lucky Charms if you're a cereal mogul.
Yeah. Who doesn't like little marshmallows for breakfast?
And he's usually depicted as having a red beard. You may have also noticed that I have said he a lot. He. Because the leprechaun is never a woman.
Never, actually, I guess.
There are no little girl leprechauns.
Well, that's gonna throw a whole lot of confusion over a whole lot of people.
Which makes you kind of wonder,
Yeah, a little bit.
Where do they come from? Where, and you never thought you'd be sitting here talking about leprechaun procreation, but here we are.
Yeah.
Hey, if you want to know about leprechaun procreation and other interesting monster facts, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on another entertaining episode of Monster Lore.
Find out where did they come from?
Where did they go?
Where did they come from?
Was this going to be Leprechaun Joe?
Yeah, obviously.
While leprechauns are never women or girls or females or however you want to say that, there are no she leprechauns out there. In most tellings of leprechauns, they are a type of fairy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. That one gets a little wishy-washy at times, but most of the information that I was reading out there kind of has them listed as fairy or fairy folk or a type of fairy.
The fae folk.
Ish.
Yeah.
So it gets a little,
Yeah.
depending on the story and the version of them, they are a fairy. Which type of fairy, though, and where they originated kind of has become muddled over hundreds of years, and their stories have been combined with other fairies' myths to create the leprechauns we know and love today.
Yeah. Even our last video about the redcaps, the Dutch catch-all phrase for all of them, the cabote, also referred to leprechauns as that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see how that would get muddled.
Yeah. I will get into that a little bit of like perhaps why it is a little bit muddled in a short little bit. Before I get into the origins, I want to discuss the current leprechaun lore from Irish folklore.
Okay. Let's jump right in.
So, according to most internet sources that I read, the leprechaun is a solitary creature who lives in remote places. So, he's a bit of a loner, I suppose. He spends his time making or mending shoes.
Oh. Which is totally the thing you do when you live all by yourself. Not around anybody.
That is actually consistent throughout, which is interesting.
Very.
And he makes a style of shoe called a brogue, which is a low-heeled shoe or boot, traditionally characterized with that's multiple pieces.
Okay.
With sturdy leather uppers and decorative perforations.
Okay. What about like little buckles?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it's that type of shoe.
The one he's commonly depicted in. Yeah. Okay.
You'll know that there's a leprechaun around because you hear the telltale sound of the tap, tap, tap.
Oh, really?
Of his tiny hammer as he's hammering nails into the soles of the shoes that he's working on.
I see.
Which reminded me a lot of the red caps that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And how they have like a sound associated with them, whether that be like the drum beating or whatnot.
Yeah.
But the leprechaun has the tap, tap, tap of a hammer when he's working on his shoes.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
Which I suppose could be eerily creepy. And I've never seen the Leprechaun movie. Have you?
Okay, I have to ask, how many Leprechaun movies do you think there are?
Have you seen the Warwick Davis Leprechaun movie?
He was in like 3 or more.
Have you seen one of them?
Yes.
Okay, I have not. So you've seen one of the Leprechaun movies.
I've seen a couple of them, but it's been a long time.
Did they use the tap, tap, tap?
I actually don't remember, because, like I said, it's been a very long time. Like, double-digit years.
Yeah, and I haven't seen them.
I don't think you're kind of into that kind of thing. They're not really your kind of movie.
So, yeah, I have a fine line between I like monster movies. And then you get into like horror movies.
Yeah.
And then if you get into any of the paranormal movies, I nope right the fuck out of there. It just doesn't happen. Like it's not happening at all. Because I will not sleep for weeks on end. Weeks. Like I will wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat with night terrors that something is hovering over the bed. So I just don't watch those movies.
Yeah. I remember the Leprechaun movies kind of straddling the border between like this is a monster movie, but it's also mostly a slasher movie.
I feel like I was wanting, like when I was researching this, I felt like I should at least watch the first one or give it a go. I feel like my tolerance for such things is a lot higher than it was when I was younger. Like Alien doesn't quite give me the scare that it used to when I was 13. So I feel like I could probably tolerate it. I mean, it can't be any worse than any X-Files or Supernatural episode.
I mean, they came out, they're rated R.
I don't watch anything that's like overly, like you will not see me watching like, what is it? Saw or whatever, the ones where they have the game show, not the game show, but the guy who like traps people in things and you can see
escape rooms with super gore.
Yeah, no thanks.
I'm pretty sure we would probably find the first Leprechaun movie to be pretty campy. Should be
also Warwick Davis, so I feel like we need to watch it just because of that. So yes, leprechauns, tap tap tapping noise.
Yes,
but if you try to find where that tapping noise is coming from, it is next to impossible because leprechauns are notoriously hard to catch.
Yeah.
And I know you might be wondering, well, why the heck would I want to try to catch a leprechaun?
I am.
Well, if you catch a leprechaun, he might lead you to his pot of gold.
Right.
Which is, that's usually what you hear as well.
Okay, yeah.
Or the leprechaun has the ability to grant 3 wishes.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so you might want to try to catch him if you hear the tap, tap, tapping noise.
Right.
But he is a wizened trickster fairy. He's quick, smart, and will disappear if you try to catch him.
Of course.
I mean, if you're going to be guarding your pot of gold that you've saved up from your shoemaking business, then you might want to prevent people from catching you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Also, but you should be a little bit beware, because being a trickster fairy, leprechauns are not to be trusted. And
Of course.
in some stories, seeking one out could result in bad luck or bodily harm.
Okay. Yeah.
But as I mentioned, because of the wealth of the pot of gold or seeking wishes, people seek the leprechaun out.
Yeah.
You
Who
know,
wouldn't?
you want that gold. I mean,
Free
who
wishes.
wants the gold or the wishes?
Everybody.
Everybody.
The answer is everybody. Everybody wants
everybody.
both
This
of
is
those
why
things.
we play the lottery, people, because you want those things.
And people are bad at math.
Depending on the story, leprechauns will reveal the hiding place of their gold or grant the wishes if they're either tortured
Ooh.
or if they are just trying to escape and let me go and I'll tell you where my pot of gold and I'll grant you the wishes are. So
Yeah.
and some of the stories
They
if
ransom themselves.
if you threaten them with violence, that may also work.
That's what happens when you're
go-
small enough to sit on a toadstool and
Yeah.
you get caught by
Someone much
basically-
bigger than you.
Gargamel.
I'm gonna tell a couple stories later on, which kind of goes through what happens
Okay.
depending on which route you pick.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
so you know.
Sure.
It is also said that if you ask the wrong wish, it could result in a lifetime of bad luck. So you got to be really careful with what you're asking
Or
the
maybe
leprechaun.
like very specific.
Very specific. It kind of, it brings to mind like Jen and how
Yeah.
some shows we've seen rather recently, What We Do in the Shadows, have have the you really need to be specific when you're asking your wishes, because those can backfire real fast, especially if you got a bored genie from thousands of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's problematic. And the leprechaun is tricky enough and hard enough to catch that if someone claims to have caught one, that you should not believe them, because people lie about such things. So
course.
it's more likely that someone is lying that they caught a leprechaun than they actually caught a leprechaun.
Mm-hmm. That sounds accurate to me.
I mean, that's right up there with you believing in leprechauns, but
Yeah.
that's just my
Let
opinion.
alone somebody believing somebody who says they caught one.
Hey!
Not only do I believe in leprechauns, but I know this guy who caught one.
Yeah, Joe, down at the pub, Joe one night, he caught a leprechaun. So this Saturday, me and Tim, we're going to go look for a leprechaun.
Yeah. He told me where to find him. It's a sure thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna get that gold. Tim wants the wishes.
Tim
I'm gonna
wants
get
the,
the gold.
I want the gold. In other tales, you might be able to get the leprechaun to reveal where his riches are by stealing his magical ring, his coin, or his amulet. So if you steal those things, then he might tell you where his gold is to get his prized
A
possessions
little
back.
bit of this is starting to sound familiar.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like what?
I'm just thinking of a particular coin from a guy who appeared to be a leprechaun at first, and then, you know, in like American Gods, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, he appeared. He played himself off as a leprechaun, but he was not.
The hottest freaking leprechaun around.
Bet you can't stick it, Master Chief.
What? I don't know.
He played Master Chief in the Halo series.
Okay, great. Yes. Sorry. Your brain
She's
jumped.
over here having a moment.
Your brain jumped right to like Halo, and I was still catching up. Unlike Mad Sweeney from American Gods, leprechauns are only around 2 to 3 feet tall.
Yeah, he's at least 3 of those.
Yeah, and they will do anything to evade capture and protect their pot of gold, the riches that they spent all their time, like I said, making shoes and squirreling away all their little hard-earned gold, saving up. So they'll do anything to kind of protect that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. Wouldn't you?
Exactly what someone who lives alone in the woods needs is a pot of gold.
Who are we to say what someone living alone in the woods needs? You gonna go tell a dragon in a cave that he can't be sleeping on the gold piles? You go tell Smog like that. I'll wait.
Uh-huh. Oh, just wait till we get to dragons.
If I live alone in the woods in a little cottage or something, I definitely want sparkly things.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, if you're in a certain time period, use them to buy supplies for your shoemaking business.
I guess. Which you maintain out in the middle of nowhere where you live by yourself.
Yes. So the leprechaun is known to be a humble cobbler, and if apprehended, he will vanish simply by tricking his captors into looking away.
Oh, he's that quick.
Yeah. Some of this stuff, it reminds me of Loki a little bit, that because he's a trickster fairy, Loki's a trickster god, but I think that's just my brain making those connections because of that, but...
Bugs Bunny vibes.
Oh, yeah.
A couple, yeah.
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 In current Irish folklore, in some cases, leprechauns are known to be cellar drunks, like cellar-dwelling drunks, who drink a particular type of alcohol called poitin or poteen. However, these tales are probably about another type of fairy, which we're going to soon learn is a problem with leprechaun mythology.
Oh.
So the leprechauns are drunk partiers, they live in cellars and they just drink all your wine. It's not necessarily true, but has been intermixed within their mythology or folklore.
Yeah, they've been sort of...
You've been typecast, right?
Yeah, blended up, shaken, perhaps even stirred into, one easy to drink concoction.
Yes.
Okay.
And, I think that in the association with St. Patrick's Day and the green dyed beer and everything, it just kind of all goes together with that. So people are happy to think that he's a lucky, drunk, cellar dwelling fairy. I'm not sure that's the kind of house elf that you want living in your house, but...
Yeah, go ahead and call somebody that, and I'm pretty sure they're ready to fight you.
The leprechaun's appearance changes depending on where they come from, the era, the author, or the source.
Okay.
So I'm going to go over some of these now, and then we're going to chat about their potential origins.
Yep.
As we've discussed, we all recognize the leprechaun as wearing green.
Yeah.
Prior to the 20th century, that was not the case.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
Santa.
Unlike Santa, this is a bit of a flip.
Yeah?
Prior to the 20th century, leprechauns were described as wearing red instead of green.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Just not at all like red caps.
Not quite, because red caps have that blood-soaked cap, and it's red because it's soaked in blood.
It's interesting.
There's no blood involved in this. It's a little less creepy than the red caps.
Yeah.
In 1831, Samuel Lover wrote, "Quite a beau in his dress notwithstanding, for he wears a red square-cut coat richly laced with gold, and inexpressible of the same cocked hat, shoes, and buckles."
Okay. Sounds snazzy.
Right. And D.R. McAnally in 1888 wrote in a book, Irish Wonders, "The leprechaun was the son of an evil spirit and a degenerative fairy, and that he is not wholly good or wholly evil." So I suppose that answers the whole procreation question. He's the son of an evil spirit and a degenerative fairy. I don't know which one is which.
Let's leave that up to your imagination.
Gonna leave that up to your imagination of which part.
I would love to hear your wild speculation in the comments below.
Or which one's the evil spirit and which one's a degenerative fairy.
This is the old
It's 1888, okay?
World version of the word fairy, just to keep that clear and above board here.
Yeah, I don't know whether we actually need to go there, but fairy, it's fae. It's like
the fae folk.
Fae folk. He also wrote, he is about 3 feet high and is dressed in a little red jacket or roundabout with red breeches buckled at the knee, gray or black stockings, and a hat cocked in the style of a century ago over a little old weathered face. Mm-hmm. Round his neck is an Elizabethan ruff, and frills of lace are at his wrists.
Fancy ruffs.
On the wild west coast, where the Atlantic winds bring almost constant rains, he dispenses with ruff and frills and wears a frieze overcoat over his pretty red suit. Mm-hmm. So that, unless on the lookout for the cocked hat, you might pass a leprechaun on the road and never know it's himself that's in it at all.
Except he's,
really short.
This tall.
3 feet high.
Yeah. Hey, what's this random kid with a beard doing out here all on his own?
This is like, but he's wearing the frieze coat, so you wouldn't know it's him.
Yeah.
But he's 3 feet high.
It's like the glasses and mustache disguise of the 1880s.
Oh, he's got a frieze coat on. He's a white man.
Oh, that can't be the right one. Obviously, this is like west coast of like Ireland.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm assuming very much so. So McKinley accounted that there were differences between leprechauns or Logermans from different regions.
Oh. They have a different name.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a couple of different names that they kind of have. Leprechauns or Logermans. So the northern leprechaun of Logerman, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Logerman, perhaps. He wore a military red coat and white breeches.
Okay.
With a broad-brimmed, high-pointed hat on which he would sometimes stand upside down.
Okay. How do you wear a pointed hat upside down?
No, he would upside down.
Oh.
He would stand on his pointed hat upside down.
Very strange.
Okay, yeah. The other passages will explain that a little bit more. He's upside down. He would stand up.
Clearly, I'm the one who's confused here.
You're like, he flips the hat over, and was he wearing the hat up the pointed side down?
Yeah.
No, he's like upside down, his feet in the air.
I don't know if that makes any more sense yet. We're gonna get there, I think.
The Lurigadon of Tipperary. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing things. He wore an antique slash jacket of red with peaks all around and a jockey cap. Also sporting a sword, which he uses as a magic wand.
Okay, and not as a sword. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then we have the Leprechaun of Kerry. He was a fat, pursy little fellow whose jolly round face rivals in redness the cutaway jacket he wears.
Wow.
That always has 7 rows of 7 buttons in each row. And the 7 rows of 7 buttons in each row is a description of dress that is like consistent.
Okay.
Throughout some of these, that he has 7 rows of 7 buttons.
That seems like an excessive amount of adjustment.
It seems like an excessive amount of buttons, but I feel like it has something to do with probably like numerology and like some sort of number
or
meaning
maybe
a certain
just an
thing.
expression of like wealth.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because he's supposed to be this loaded little
He's
rich guy.
Loaded little rich guy, yeah.
With the magic wand sword that he waves around.
So then we have the Cloricon of Monaghan. Wore a swallow-tailed evening coat of red with a green vest, white breeches, black stockings, shiny shoes, and a long cone hat without a brim, sometimes used as a weapon. I can't make this stuff up, okay?
I'm just getting flashbacks to Odd Job from James Bond.
Yeah, that brim of Odd Job's hat, though, was pretty sure that was steel.
Yeah,
so.
Same with the guy from the Avengers movie. Not the
Avengers.
Not the American Avengers. The British Avengers. series from the 60s that they made.
They
made into a
remade.
movie in like 1999
Uma Thurman,
ish.
right?
Yeah, Ray Fiennes, Sean Connery. Sean Connery.
If you know what we're talking about, we love you.
Tell me what you would have done with the weather machine.
So I did want to mention that here we get into the whole like crisscrossing, like convolutedness of mixockery.
Yeah.
We're
We're going to roll with it. We're making up words now.
mixockery, kind of like it.
Yeah.
That the Cluricon and the Leprechauns are separate creatures.
Okay. Yeah.
So I know I just mentioned like the one guy was talking about how they dressed, but in other sources I was finding that the Cluricon was a different creature, and he is the one that haunts cellars, drinks, smokes, and plays tricks. So, and it's surmised that over time they blended the two together to bring their tales to a wider audience. And that's where the references of leprechauns drinking and being a drunk kind of come from.
Gotcha.
So just something to think about this March 17th when you're guzzling green beer.
Or next.
Or next.
Or, who are we to stop you from guzzling green beer any time of year?
Right. Yeah. You do you, boo. So William Butler Yeats, who was a writer and amateur folklorist in the early 20th century, he classified the leprechaun as a solitary fairy, and that their great wealth comes from treasure crocks buried of old in wartime, and that the leprechauns uncovered the treasure crocks and appropriated them for themselves. So that's where they get their wealth from. That's what he's saying. He also noted that the solitary fairy, like the leprechaun, wore red jackets, while the trooping fairies wore green jackets. The leprechaun jacket had 7 rows of 7 buttons and 7 rows of 7 buttons with 7 buttons in each row. He wrote that the red jacket was covered with the frieze coat, and that he wears a cocked hat, and when he is up to anything unusually mischievous, he leaps onto a wall and spins, balancing himself on the point of the hat with his heels in the air. So that's where I was. Okay. You were like, "What's the hat's upside down?" Like, no, yeah. He's like, I feel like that's where some of this like comes from. Is like
just a quirky,
it's a kind of a continuation. He's like dancing or whatever, but like upside down, and he's like a breakdancing leprechaun. According to the Ancient Legends of Ireland by Lady Wilde, the leprechauns are merry, industrious, trickster little sprites who do all the shoemaker's work and the tailors and the cobblers for the fairy gentry, and are often seen at sunset under the hedge singing and stitching. They know all the secrets of hidden treasures, and they take a fancy to a person will guide him to the spot in the fairy rath where the pot of gold lies buried. It is believed that a family now living in Castlerea came by their riches in a strange way, all through the good offices of a friendly leprechaun. And the legend has been handed down through many generations as an established fact.
That sounds like a really good way to cover up the dirty, dirty deeds of your ancestors.
So this story is one of the stories that I'm going to go over from Ancient Legends of Ireland by Lady Wilde. If you want to read these yourself, you can. This book is available on Project Gutenberg, so you can go look that up. I will link it down below as well. I'm just going to summarize a couple of these stories in my own words a little bit. If you want the full version, go check out the book on Project Gutenberg. It's Ancient Legends of Ireland. The one that she was talking about, Castlerea, with like the wealth that was passed down, that's this story. So in one of these stories, there was a poor boy who was thought to be a changeling because he didn't, like, my words here, I'm summarizing. Because he didn't participate in sports and he was quiet and spent his nights reading. Who here feels like a changeling?
Wow.
You don't conform to society? You're a changeling.
Here we are on YouTube.
So.
Telling stories about leprechauns.
Right. So this changeling boy drove his cart of turf back and forth, presumably to sell it, to make money. And all he ever dreamed of was to be rich so he could give up his turf selling cart and live in peace and quiet all alone.
Want to carry on in the turf wars?
No, he didn't want to be part of the turf wars anymore.
Okay.
He was over it.
Yeah.
He had read lots of stories, because we know he reads. So he read lots of stories about leprechauns and knew all their secrets. So day by day, he listened for that telltale tap, tap, tapping of the leprechaun's hammer.
That's how you know you got leprechauns.
Yeah. So if you hear any tap, tap, tap into your house, you got leprechauns. Sorry to tell you.
Yeah. It's not your house settling, it's leprechauns.
It's leprechauns. One day, as the sun was setting, he saw one of the little fellows under a dock leaf working away. So the boy jumped down from his cart and grabbed the leprechaun by its neck. And he demanded to know where the creature's gold was. The leprechaun asked to not be hurt and told the boy they were cousins once removed. Don't hurt me, we're cousins once removed. Because
that's very convenient.
Because the boy's a changeling, remember?
Right,
so they're very, sort of, they're not human is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah.
The leprechaun said they were near relations and he would tell the boy where the riches were, but he'd have to be quick because they would disappear when the last red glow of the sun vanishes into gold. So as soon as the sun set, you wouldn't be able to find them. So the boy took the leprechaun and they drove to an old fort and went through a door made of stone in the wall.
Right.
When he went through, all around there were riches of gold, silver, and other kinds of riches. Mm-hmm. The leprechaun warned the boy and he said, you need to hurry up because once the sun sets, the door will close and you will never be able to leave. So not only you can't find the gold after that, but now you can't leave because you're stuck in this place.
Yeah.
So the boy did as he was told and he gathered up a bunch of the riches, stashed them in his cart, and drove through the door before the sun set. But then the leprechaun disappeared and he never saw the leprechaun again and he was never able to thank him. The boy then never told anyone about the riches and stored them in a bank in Dublin. The boy then built the house and garden that he always wanted to. He had servants and he gathered wise men around him so he can learn to be a great and powerful man, because that's always what he wanted. He wanted a quiet garden to read in and just be left alone. And then he wanted to learn lots of different things. So he did that. And then it actually said that he and his descendants are living today, rich and prosperous. Legend has it their wealth never decreases despite giving lots to the poor and having friendly hearts and being liberal people.
This is how you can tell it's a story.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of them. So I feel like in that one, because like I said, leprechauns are notoriously will try to get out of things. They don't want to be caught. They don't want to tell you where the riches are or anything like that. But in this one, I feel like because the boy was the changeling, and even though he grabbed the leprechaun by his neck, I mean, that would be, to me, be warrant enough for the leprechaun to say, no. But the leprechaun said, because we are related, he would show him where his stuff was. So there is another story I'm going to tell you. Okay. That's not as nice.
Oh.
So
there's always the not nice.
Not
stories.
nice. This is the warning one, the warning tale. So Lady Wilde also wrote another tale about how malicious leprechauns can be and how you should be cautious when dealing with them or else they will take their revenge. So in this one, the story follows a young lad. Clearly in this one, though, he's not a changeling. He's not a cousin of the leprechaun. So, he probably doesn't read and maybe he hangs out with lots of friends or whatever. He's not a loner like the other boy.
Plays sports ball.
I don't know. The other one kind of was like, if you're a loner guy, people will think you're a changeling and you'll be rewarded by riches.
If you read, that's not normal.
This story follows a young lad who's out working in the fields, and he also spotted a leprechaun mending his shoes under a dock leaf. I don't know what the hell is a dock leaf, but it's mentioned in both of these stories. It's a plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it have a broad leaf?
It does. It's a broad-leafed plant.
Okay. Well, let's throw a picture
Looks like a weed. So he spotted a leprechaun mending his shoes under a dock leaf, and this boy didn't take his eyes off the leprechaun, so the leprechaun couldn't just escape.
Right.
And he was able to capture him.
Okay.
So in this story, the young lad was not very nice to the leprechaun, and he basically tortured the creature until he told him where his gold was. Like, he held him over the fire and did not nice things to him until the leprechaun revealed where the gold was.
Sounds like a real role model.
So the leprechaun told the boy that the gold was under the dock leaf where the boy found him. Mm-hmm. So the boy ran off to find the gold, but at this moment in time, his mother was coming in the door carrying some milk, and the boy ran into the mother and spilt all of her milk. When the mother saw the creature, she grew angry, and she said he brought ill luck and kicked the leprechaun out of the house.
Okay.
The boy went to the spot the leprechaun told him and dug and dug and dug, but never found any gold. At the same time, the husband was coming home and overheard men laughing from the fort and talking how, oh, those people, they're looking for a pot of gold, but they'll never find it because it's laying at the bottom of an old quarry hid under stones by the garden.
All of that is very specific.
Very specific. I feel like it was the leprechaun. It's probably the leprechaun. Was it the leprechaun? It was probably the leprechaun.
Okay.
But if someone was...
Spoilers.
But if someone was to find it, they needed to go at midnight and beware of bringing their wife with them.
Yeah.
You know who kicked him out of the house, right? Was like, you dirty little thing. You bring ill luck. So that's very specific.
Yeah.
The man did whatever good husband is supposed to do.
Opinions might vary here.
Probably. In this case, if he was smarter, he shouldn't have done this, only because of the woman he was dealing with. So the man hurried home and told his wife about all of this, and he also told her he was heading out to the gold, but she couldn't come.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, he didn't tell her.
Not suspicious at all.
No, and he didn't tell her why she couldn't come. Just, you can't come. The wife decided she wasn't going to listen to him and hurried ahead of her husband to find the gold for herself and keep it for herself. So she was creeping in the dark and tripped over a stone and fell down into the quarry and broke her leg because of all of this. She was lying in the quarry groaning and moaning because she was in pain, and the husband came up and was like, what is that noise? And he was frightened because of this strange noise he heard, and his wife called out to him and said, it's just me, you fool, come get me and carry me out of here. The man came across his wife. She had broken her leg, and he went out and he found a neighbor that was willing to help him drag her butt out of the quarry because of her broken leg.
Yep.
And he basically said something like, is this the treasure I was supposed to find?
Had it all along, except now she hates me.
It's a curse. So the woman did heal from this, but limped for the rest of her life. And it was said that the curse of the leprechaun was upon her.
Yeah, I mean, because broken bones always healed perfectly way back when.
I suppose they would heal better if someone was able to set them or something.
Yeah, because there were so many people around.
I would imagine they would probably still limp, though, yeah.
Yeah.
The story goes that family or anyone belonging to them, so their ancestors, never found the pot of gold. And the leprechaun still sits under the dock leaf and laughs as he mends his shoes with his little hammer. Tick, 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 tick. And then everyone is afraid to touch him because they know he can take his revenge. Tick, 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 tick.
There's a guy who knows how to set boundaries.
Right?
Yeah. He's figured out how to manage expectations.
I think so.
He's the real role model of this story.
I kind of see. I mean, from everything I was reading, it's like, okay, yeah, you try to catch him and torture him for his money. Like, how many people you breaking into their houses and stealing their crap aren't going to be mad about that?
Yeah, yeah.
But where the heck do they come from? We haven't even got to that yet. We're like, where did leprechauns originate? We have a lot of leprechaun stories. We have what they look like, but where did they originate? Like, where did the stories come from?
Yeah.
Some folk traditions believe that the leprechauns are descended from the Tuatha De Danann,
Okay.
which I know reminds me completely of Willow. And every time I hear it, I need to like just
I feel like a lot of Willow, like the movie Willow, and I guess the TV series, was inspired by some of these legends. I mean, they did have brownies. Which,
I'm sure it was inspired, or
Yeah.
they've taken some of the things from some sort of folklore.
Yep.
The Tuatha De Danann were a magical race from Ireland with supernatural powers. They could be a whole other episode, to be honest. To summarize, they invaded Ireland at one point and were driven underground by the Milesians. But the earliest tale of the leprechaun comes from the 8th century.
Okay.
The name comes from the Middle Irish word Lucorpan, which means little body. And the first recorded reference was in the story of the death of Fergus MacLeity, where the first leprechauns were water spirits.
Okay.
In this story, Fergus is sleeping by a seashore or on a beach, and the Lucorpans grab him while he's sleeping.
Okay.
So Fergus then finds himself, he wakes up in their grasp, hovering over the water, and somehow he traps them. In the references I was reading, they didn't explain
How the tables have turned.
But somehow he traps them, and he makes them promise to share their swimming skills with him in exchange for their freedom. So again, that's the whole like trapping and sharing
some kind of exchange
in exchange for blah 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 for their freedom. So the Lucorpans grant him waterproof powers and the ability to swim underwater, but ban him from the lake that they grabbed him from.
So his mascara never runs, but you can't come back here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What did you just say? Oh, his mascara runs. Yeah, so waterproof powers and the ability to swim underwater, but no, you can't come swim in this lake.
This is our lake.
Right?
Get off of our lake.
He didn't heed their warning, of course. They never do, right? Never do in these stories. So Fergus doesn't listen, and he goes into the lake, and he finds himself deep diving with a monster called the Murdress.
Okay.
Murdress. His encounter with the monster causes a facial disfigurement, which disqualifies him from his rulership.
Oh, he's also royalty.
Apparently. Also, where do you live in this Kardashian realm where you get a facial disfigurement? What are we on, like?
It must have been pretty significant.
Is this nowadays?
Yeah, that's like, oh.
It must have been real bad.
You're on, like,
if you're like, oh, you can't rule. Your face is messed up, son.
Like, oh, damn, I can't even look at that.
You can't even look at that. You're not going to produce any heirs. It's so hideous. Or, like,
the fact that he's royalty has nothing to do with...
No, was he so bad that, like, he couldn't speak, so therefore he couldn't rule or he couldn't see or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just says he was disfigured and then he was disqualified from rulership. He's got, like, a little scar right here. Ah, it's ugly.
I'm hideous. Don't look at me.
I'm hideous. Don't look at me. It's probably like this big.
Yeah, it must have been pretty good.
Must have been pretty bad. That's apparently their earliest story where the leprechauns come from, is that from the 8th century, the death of Fergus MacLeity. While the leprechaun has not always been known to have red beards and green clothes, one of the oldest things about them, and I believe I mentioned this earlier, is that they are cobblers.
Okay, yeah.
In some cases, their name is suggested to be derived from the Irish god Lugh.
Okay.
And they should be known as Lucorpan or Lugh bodies. Wherever they originate, it's important to note that these Irish men are cherished symbols of not only an Irish holiday, but numerous sports teams, a cereal, and as we mentioned, a horror movie from the 80s starring Warwick Davis. Well, I hope you found this video as entertaining as I did researching the origins of the leprechauns. If you want to learn more interesting facts about mythological creatures and monsters, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next video.
And if you want to help us out, flick a gold coin at the like button and tell us your own leprechaun stories.
My name is Pam.
And I'm Justin.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm getting the cute little puppy dog eyes over here. Like, pay attention to me.
I'm the star of my own action movie. I call it Demando.